Chapter 11. Friday, after midnight. Meg was wide awake now, too awake, her mind filled with horrifying images of Tony and Brian, of the thick, dreaded woods where so many tragedies, explained and unexplained, had taken place. Tony, what were you doing there? She thought. Why were you in those woods with Brian tonight? And why haven't you come out? She knew she had to go there. She had to see that they were all right. She crept over to her closet and pulled out the jeans she had been wearing earlier. Struggling to pull them up in the dark, she stumbled, bumped her desk, and the desk lamp went crashing to the floor. "What was that?" she heard her mother ask in the next room. A few seconds later, her father lumbered out to investigate, turning on the hall light and peering into her room. "Meg, where are you going? What time is it?" He looked like a bear coming out of hibernation, yawning and squinting at her. "It's late, Dad, but I have to go out." "Where are you going?" he repeated, rubbing his thick black stubble. He looked very confused. "Oh, well, Tony's missing, you see." "Missing? What do you mean missing? Where?" "In the Fear Street woods, I think." Her father thought about that for a while. Meg pulled a heavy wool sweater down over her head. She had it all the way on before she realized it was backward. She decided to leave it that way. "Let me get this straight. You're going to the Fear Street woods?" Her father was starting to wake up. "Yes, I have to. Tony and Brian went there, I think, earlier this evening. Now they're missing." "Fear Street?" He was trying hard to make sense of what Meg was telling him, but of course it didn't make any sense at all. "Sorry, I'm not letting you go there in the middle of the night." "But, Tony, Dad, please, I have to. Brian once showed me the cave where he goes to play Wizards and Dungeons. I think I can find it. The police won't know where it is. I can help them." He thought about it, rubbing his dark stubble. "Oh, all right, but I'll have to go with you. Just give me a second." He disappeared back into the bedroom. Meg stood in the hall. She could hear him explaining quickly to her mother, banging into furniture as he pulled on his clothes. She thought of running to the car, driving away before he had come after her, but something held her back. She realized she was glad he was coming. The dangers of the Fear Street woods weren't just rumor. People really did disappear in those dark hills that stretched for miles past the end of Fear Street. Strange, impossible accidents were reported in the newspaper. Trees fell seemingly for no reason at all. Normally fearful animals attacked with bizarre ferocity. Perhaps the strangest thing of all about those woods was that no birds ever ventured there. No birds chewed the ripe wild berries, or dug for worms in the soft earth, or built nests in the trees. Over the years, teams of scientists from universities around the nation had come intent on explaining why the woods were bird-free, but they all went home as mystified as when they had arrived. "Ready?" Mr. Dalton reappeared in the hallway in a heavy plaid wool shirt and corduroys. "Let me just get a couple of flashlights. You can tell me the whole story on the way." There wasn't much to tell. As they drove down the silent, empty roads toward Fear Street, Meg told him about Tony and Brian going off to play Wizards and Dungeons, and then about the call she had just received from Tony's dad. "Tony isn't into that game, is he?" her father asked, turning on the windshield wipers to remove the thick mist from the windshield. "No," Meg answered quietly, "he isn't." "I didn't think so. He's not the type." Meg was too tired to ask her father what he meant by that. She knew he didn't really approve of Tony. He probably meant it as some kind of a dig, but she didn't want to get into any kind of discussion now. She just wanted to concentrate on Tony and Brian being okay. As they turned down Fear Street, the sky seemed to darken. Meg realized it was because of the trees that overhung the street. They passed the old cemetery and followed the narrow, curving street to its end. Flashing red lights indicated that the police were already there. 2 patrol cars were parked at the edge of the woods, the lights on their roofs blood red, circling soundlessly, a silent alarm that made Meg's heart jump, and made the fear she had been holding down rise up in her throat. She jumped out before her father stopped the car and ran across the wet ground, blinking against the harsh red lights, fighting the fear, pushing it back down so that she could breathe. "Oh, hi!" She bumped right into Tony's dad, who leaned against the patrol car, trying to regain his balance. His eyes looked red and watery in the harsh light. He pointed into the woods. "They're in there somewhere. The cops found footprints. They're going to find them." It was obvious that he'd had quite a bit to drink. Meg had to struggle to make out what he was saying. Brian's parents, Sid and Marge, Meg's aunt and uncle hurried over, their faces tight with worry. "Meg, you didn't have to come," Sid said, squeezing her arm as if making sure she was really there. "I'm sure Brian and Tony are perfectly—" "Oh, hi, Todd." Meg's dad appeared behind Meg, looking grim and uncomfortable. "Any sign of them?" "Not yet, but they're in there," Marge said, her voice a whisper. She looked away. "We don't know why Brian likes that game so much," Sid said. "He probably just lost track of time. He's been doing it a lot these days." That's probably it, Meg's dad said, not too convincingly. He looked over at Tony's dad, who was still propped up against one of the patrol cars, his eyes swimming in his head. Mr. Dalton frowned and then suddenly remembered the flashlights he was carrying. Let's go. We can help the police look for them. He offered a flashlight to Brian's dad. Sid started to take it, but Marge pulled his hand back. No, stay here with me. The police had to stay here by the cars, not go hunting for them. I'm not just going to stand here, Mr. Dalton said impatiently. They didn't tell that to me. I'm coming with you, Meg said, reaching for a flashlight. I know where the cave is where they play. Follow me. Mr. Dalton hesitated for a moment, pulling back on the flashlight, but, seeing the frantic look on Meg's face, he relented. Okay, but stick close to me. Stay right with me, you hear? Meg nodded agreement, clicked on the flashlight, and followed its narrow beam of light into the woods. The ground was blanketed with dried brown leaves and fallen twigs. Every footstep made a loud crunch, which seemed to echo through the trees. Meg stopped, thinking someone was following them, but it was just the sound of her own sneakers crackling over the leafy ground. Someone's going to have to give those boys a good talking to, Mr. Dalton said, aiming his flashlight at his feet, but still stumbling over a fallen tree limb. He landed hard on his knees, but quickly pulled himself up and continued on. They've got no right to scare us all this way. Meg didn't say anything. She was thinking of Evan, then Brian finding Evan shot dead in these same woods. Meg's father wandered off to the left. She could see his flashlight flickering between the trees. Lost in her own thoughts, she didn't realize they were heading in different directions. She shivered. The air was wet and cold. It didn't feel like spring in the woods tonight. Tree frogs began to chirp, a sudden deafening symphony of scratching. She heard a flapping sound overhead. It wasn't a bird. It must have been a bat. Tony! She suddenly shouted. Her voice didn't sound like her at all. It sounded like a frightened girl in a bad horror movie. Nightmare on Fear Street, she thought. Freddy's coming. Freddy's coming. No. Stop thinking stupid thoughts. Tony! Tony! She didn't care what she sounded like. She just wanted to find him. Something darted behind the wide trunk of an old maple tree. Something? Or someone. Tony! Brian! Are you there? No, it was an animal, a raccoon, slinking out of her circle of light, seeking the safety of the dark. Without thinking, she followed the creature, trying to get it back into her light. She stopped when she realized she'd become sidetracked, and changed direction, moving the yellow light in wide circles now. The tree frogs stopped their shrieking as suddenly as they had started. Now the only sound was the cracking of the dry leaves beneath her sneakers, and... Dad? Where was he? She had kept his light in view in the corner of her eye, but now she couldn't find it. Dad? Hey, Dad? No reply. She had wandered too far, following that stupid raccoon, lost in her own morbid thoughts, and now she was alone, at least until she could find him again, or until she could find Tony and Brian. Tony! Tony! Can you hear me? Where were the police? Where were their flashlights? How far had she wandered? What direction was she going? She turned around, then turned around again. Nothing but blackness. Tony? Brian? She climbed a low hill, slipping on the wet leaves. The Fear Street woods weren't flat. Low hills and sharp ravines made hiking treacherous in the daytime. At night, she realized, it was impossible not to stumble, not to fall. Tony? Dad? Silence. I'm not going to get frightened, she thought, but what was that tight feeling in her throat? And why did her legs feel so rubbery? And why could she feel her heart pounding against her chest? No, I'm not going to get frightened, at least not any more frightened than I already am. Dad! Her voice sounded so weak. She was trying to shout, but she couldn't. Her mouth felt so dry. Dad! Tony! Where were they? Where was she? She took a few steps forward, then turned around. She followed her beam of light through the trees. A tall, thick clump of flowering weeds appeared to be a man leaning toward her. She turned away from it, feeling a stab of fright course down her back. She took a few more steps, but was she going forward or back? She moved the light in a circle. She was spinning. No, the ground was spinning. Stop! She took determined steps, careful but determined, walking in a straight line, twigs crackling loudly beneath her. Another low, gray animal slinking out of the light, which she catch directly ahead of her. Tony! Dad! Anybody hear me? She stopped, but the crackling continued for a few seconds. She spun around. Who is it? Silence. Had she just imagined it? It sounded like footsteps. She started walking again. Someone was there. Tony, is that you, Brian? She swung the light around, moving it slowly in a wide arc. No one. Was it the police? Her dad? No, they would have answered her. Was someone else lurking in the woods? A stranger? She started walking faster. The footsteps behind her came faster. She was up on the balls of her feet, trying to tiptoe away, trying to run over the impossibly tangled ground. But whoever pursued her was faster. Oh! A hand grabbed her shoulder roughly from behind. Chapter 12. Friday after midnight. Her flashlight was kicked from her hand. It sailed into a deep clump of leaves, its light buried. Meg tried to twist free, but the hand held tight, squeezing her shoulder harder as she struggled. She realized she was gasping for air. The sharp pain from her shoulder was spreading down her arm, down her side, down her entire body. The grip on her shoulder tightened. She felt hot breath against her cheek. She smelled onions and french fry grease. I warned you. Don't have the party. The words were whispered, but the whisper was a roar. With one desperate surge of strength, she pulled herself out of the suffocating grasp. She lurched forward and screamed as she began to fall. She raised her hands to grab onto something, but there was nothing to grab. She was falling down a steep ravine, falling face forward, then rolling. Her head hit something hard, a rock or a tree stump. Lights flashed in her head, flashed in rhythm to the throbbing pain. The lights didn't stop, even though she was unconscious. She came to quickly, feeling the pain in her head and in her shoulder. She didn't know where she was. She looked for her ceiling, her dresser, her desk, but she wasn't in bed. She was lying on wet ground, in a deep, foul-smelling pile of decaying leaves and weeds. She sat up, her head throbbing harder. She remembered now. Hey! She tried to shout, but she didn't make any sound. She reached up and pulled twigs from her hair. My hair. I must look like a mess, she thought. Of all the crazy things to think about, am I going crazy? A leaf was stuck against the back of her neck. She pulled it away and felt a surge of nausea. She fought it back, and sitting up straight, taking deep breaths, fought back the dizziness too, and stood up, and saw the body lying at her feet. At least, she saw part of a body, a sweatshirt pulled up to reveal bare skin, the back of the sweatshirt torn and stained, blue jeans, an arm. Wait a minute, was she seeing things? Was she hallucinating because of her fall? She dropped to her knees to get a closer look. No, it was a real body. It moved suddenly and groaned. It was alive. The stains on the sweatshirt. The stains. She reached forward and touched the sleeve, pulling her hand back as she felt the warm wetness. Blood. She crawled around him and turned him so she could see the face. Brian. Not Tony. Brian. She felt so guilty for thinking that, but she couldn't stop her thoughts. She couldn't hold back the feeling of relief she felt. Brian, are you awake? Can you hear me? He groaned again but didn't move. His mouth was bleeding. She saw his face in the light. It was swollen and bloody. The light? Someone was shining a flashlight down on them. Meg, what are you doing here? A familiar voice called from the top of the ravine. Tony, is that you? You're okay? Are you really okay? He came sliding down the side of the ravine. Then he ran to her, pulled her up from the ground, and put his arms around her. Tony, I was so worried. Oh, I'm so glad to see you. Somebody grabbed me and pushed me and... He held her tighter, pressing his cheek against her forehead. Shh, it's going to be okay, he said softly. But, Brian, she started, he's... She could feel Tony's muscles go tense. He let go of her and took a step back. I went to get help, but I got turned around. I was heading into the woods instead of the street. But what happened? Meg cried, feeling her panic return the moment Tony let go of her. Brian fell down the ravine. I guess his flashlight went out, and he tried to run without it. I didn't see him fall. It took me a long while to find him. Then I went to get help. But I don't understand why. How did you find him? Tony asked. Meg, what are you doing here? Someone grabbed me. I got away, but I fell, she said, reaching for his hand, squeezing his hand. Oh, your hand is cut. He pulled away from her. From branches and things. I was running, trying to get help. I guess I cut myself. Who grabbed you? What happened? He spoke to her tenderly, his face filled with concern. He still cared about her. Despite the horror of what had just happened, she felt strangely relieved. I couldn't see him. It happened so fast. Over here. Here they are. You kids okay? The shouting voices were accompanied by darting circles of light, and in a few seconds, 2 policemen appeared, followed by Meg's dad. You're okay? He cried, rushing forward to hug her. I thought you were right with me. I turned away and you were gone. Where's the other one? One of the policemen asked Tony, shining his flashlight into Tony's face. The policeman was very young, Meg saw. He looked as young as Tony, although that was impossible. And he seemed very frantic, as if this were the first excitement he'd had on the job. Tony turned away from the harsh light and pointed down into the ravine. Brian's down there. He fell. He's hurt pretty bad. Radio for an ambulance, the policeman told his partner as he scrambled down the side of the ravine to examine Brian. The other policeman turned and started to run to the patrol car. He's beat up pretty bad, the policeman called, squatting next to Brian, shining his light in Brian's face. The policeman sounded too upset. Don't they teach them to always sound calm? Meg asked herself. Brian stirred and opened his eyes. He tried to lift his head, but the policeman gently indicated for him to lie back. What happened here, son? The policeman shined his light in Tony's face. That's funny, Meg thought. He looks younger than Tony, but he calls Tony son? Tony squinted back at him. He looked very tired and very frightened, Meg thought. He fell. I didn't really see it. Pretty bad fall, the policeman said, lowering his light to Tony's chest. The front of Tony's sweatshirt was mud-stained and torn. I went for help, Tony told him, but I got lost. What were you doing here late at night in the first place? The policeman demanded. Meg could hear an ambulance siren in the distance. Nothing really, Tony said uncomfortably. Playing a game? Some game, the policeman growled. He took off his uniform jacket and draped it over Brian's chest. Keep warm, son. You're going to be okay. Brian gazed up at him. He didn't say anything. He didn't seem to know where he was. A few minutes later, the ambulance arrived. 2 men in white lab coats dropped down into the ravine and lifted Brian onto a canvas stretcher. I'm okay, Brian insisted. Really, I'm okay. He stared up at Meg, but didn't seem to recognize her. I'm okay, really. She heard him protesting as they carried him off to the ambulance. Your dad is waiting for you, Mr. Dalton told Tony, not bothering to hide his angry feelings. And I'd better go talk to Sid and Marge. You boys sure caused a lot of trouble and a lot of worry tonight for no good reason. Tony looked away and didn't say anything. If I were your dad, I'd ground you for life, Mr. Dalton said. Yeah, Tony muttered under his breath. What did you say to me? Meg's dad flared. Now, come on, Dad, Meg said softly. It wasn't Tony's fault. He's had a hard night, too. It must have been very frightening being lost in these woods. Give him a break. I tried to help, Tony repeated. Mr. Dalton scowled at Tony. Then his face filled with surprise as he looked at Meg closely for the first time. What happened to you? You're covered with dirt. I tripped, she lied quickly, feeling her face go red. Luckily, he couldn't see by the light of the flashlight. That ravine is impossible to see, and it's so steep. Poor Brian, Tony muttered. Poor Brian. It's a little late for that, Mr. Dalton sputtered angrily. It's a little late for everything. Maybe you'll think twice before going off in the woods to play a stupid, worthless game. He stomped on ahead of them, looking like an angry bear who just had a fish stolen away from him. Meg and Tony followed behind, walking slowly. Meg took Tony's arm and leaned against him as they walked. Why were you here playing the game with Brian? She asked, whispering so her father couldn't hear their conversation. Tony shrugged. I don't know. It looked like it might be fun. But you were never interested in it before, Meg said, walking even slower, letting her father get farther ahead. Yeah, I was, Tony told her, sounding defensive. I just wanted to see what it was like, but I didn't know Brian was so serious about it. As soon as we got to the woods, he sort of changed. He became a third-level wizard or whatever. He was playing a character, but he was the character. He's too serious. It's like he lost himself completely. It's scary. What character did you play? Meg asked, holding onto his arm, stepping carefully over a fallen tree limb. A warrior, I guess. It was weird. The whole thing's weird. You never could stand Brian. Now, all of a sudden. That's not true, Tony said angrily. He stopped walking and pushed her away. How many times do I have to say it? I was just curious about the game, that's all. Give me a break. You want to cross-examine someone? Go to law school. I'm sorry, she said quickly, surprised by his anger. I didn't mean anything. I've had a bad night too, you know. He suddenly seemed to remember that she had been grabbed by someone in the darkness. His face softened. He lowered his head. I'm sorry too, he muttered. So you didn't see the guy who grabbed you? No, it was so dark it happened so fast. He took away my flashlight, then he grabbed me. Then he whispered something in my ear about the party. Then I fell down the ravine. He what? What about the party? Tony put both hands on her shoulders to stop her. Tell me this again? He said, I warned you about the party. Something like that. He sounded very angry, very crazy. I was so scared. He was breathing into my ear. His breath was so hot, and he really hurt my shoulder. It still aches. Tony looked very upset. Do you think he followed you into the woods? Do you think he was waiting outside your house and followed you here? I don't know. I don't know what to think. Last night I was coming home from Shannon's. I think someone tried to run me over in a car. I'm frightened, Tony. Oh no. No. I'm just so glad you're okay, Tony said, pulling her close. This is all too much, Meg. Too much. You'll forget about the party now, won't you?" "What?" "This is just too scary, too dangerous. You'll forget about the party, right?" "No way," Meg said, a grim frown of determination on her face. "You don't know me very well, do you? A challenge is a challenge. I'm going to have that party for Ellen. It's the only way I can find out who is doing all this to us." Tony let go of her. He stood staring into her eyes, then looked away. "I love the way he's so worried about me," Meg thought. "You look troubled," she said. "What are you thinking?" "That you're making a big mistake," he said, suddenly looking very scared. "You've got to think about this, Meg. Really think about it. Whoever tried to run you down, whoever grabbed you tonight, he might have been trying to show you that he might do something even worse." Chapter 13. Sunday afternoon. On Sunday, a balmy, hazy Sunday that felt more like summer than spring, Meg slept late, had a long, leisurely breakfast of pancakes and bacon, and then walked up to North Hills to visit Brian. It wasn't exactly her idea of how to spend a Sunday afternoon, but both of her parents had urged her and pestered her and repeatedly told her how much it would mean to Brian, who wasn't allowed to leave his bed because the doctors thought he might have internal injuries. So finally she gave in and decided just to get it over with. Brian lived in an enormous white house overlooking the river. With its tall columns on both sides of the double-doored entranceway, it always reminded Meg of more of a southern plantation than a house a normal person would live in. When she was little, Meg would wander off by herself down the long, carpeted corridors, peeking into room after room, until she'd get frightened and run back to where everyone else was, usually in the front parlor or the library. The house was too big, too creaky, too old, too scary. No wonder Brian grew up to be so weird. As Meg walked up the long, smooth driveway, lined with carefully pruned hedges, she saw a familiar blue Taurus beside the house. She saw Corey Brooks and his friend David Metcalf coming out of the house. They weren't smiling or joking around as usual, she noticed immediately. "Hey, Meg." "Hi, how's it going?" Corey called. She wondered if he was glad to see her, or glad to be leaving Brian's house. "Okay, I guess," she said. "Looking good," David said. Meg was embarrassed. She suddenly remembered she hadn't even brushed her hair. She was only going to see Brian after all. She hadn't planned on running into anyone else. "I heard about your lunch bag the other day," Corey said sympathetically. "Great lunch." "We didn't know you were a vampire," David said, laughing at his own joke. No one else laughed. "It was only red paint," Meg said, making a face at David. "But it sure looked like blood." "What a bad news joke," Corey said. "I'm not so sure it was a joke," Meg said, feeling a sudden chill despite the heat. "Yeah, Lisa told me someone was trying to scare you," Corey said, shaking his head. Then his mouth dropped open and his eyes nearly popped out of his head. "Lisa! Oh no, I forgot about her. I was supposed to pick her up an hour ago." He started running to his car with David following. "Hey, how's Brian doing?" Meg called after them. "Not too good," Corey called, starting the car while David scrambled to climb in. "He's real quiet, and when he does talk, he doesn't make any sense," David called. He didn't make any sense before his fall, Meg thought. Then she scolded herself for thinking such harsh things about her poor, injured cousin. She watched Corey speed around the circular driveway and take off toward Lisa's house, which was only a few blocks away. She watched the car until it turned a corner and, realizing she couldn't put it off any longer, went up to Flagstone Walk and rang the bell. "Oh, hi, Meg. Your mom told me you were coming. Brian will be so glad to see you." "Hi, Aunt Marge. How's he doing?" Meg's aunt chewed her lower lip. She seemed very nervous. "Oh, he'll be okay, I think. He's just a little distracted. The shock of the accident, you know." "Yeah, he must be pretty shaken up," Meg said awkwardly. She didn't really know what to say. She hurried past the long mirrored dining room, down the corridor that led to Brian's room. "He looks worse than he feels," Brian's mother called after her. "Thanks for the warning," Meg said. She turned and glanced back just before she reached Brian's room. Aunt Marge suddenly looked so much older. Meg continued to Brian's bedroom door, stopped just outside it, and forced a smile to her face. She froze it there, determined to keep smiling no matter what. She had come to cheer Brian up after all. She knocked on the heavy oak door and walked in. Brian looked up but didn't make an attempt to sit up. "Brian, is that you?" she cried. Nice going, Meg, she thought. Of all the stupid things to say, why did I say that? Why not just walk in and say, "Oh, your face looks like something in a butcher shop window." Go ahead. Tell him how horrible he looks. That'll cheer him up. "Hi, Meg," Brian said. His voice sounded okay, but his right cheek was so swollen he couldn't move his mouth very well. He had one black eye which opened only halfway. A cut on his chin, Meg saw, had required several stitches. Brian, you really know how to take a fall. Maybe you should be a stuntman. He tried to laugh, but it came out a wheeze. A wizard doesn't need a stuntman, he said. At least that's what Meg thought he said. He was talking so slowly and softly it was hard for her to hear. I didn't bring you candy or flowers, she said, sitting down tentatively at the foot of the queen-size bed. I didn't think you really wanted that stuff. He stared at her with his one good eye, but didn't reply. Is there anything you do want? Anything I can bring you? Your homework, maybe? She laughed, a forced laugh, but it sounded pretty genuine. He didn't seem to hear her. How do I look? He asked, his voice flat, expressionless. You look, not great. She wasn't going to lie to him. He had mirrors. He could see for himself. Let's put it this way. You've looked better? He seems to be thinking about that answer. Finally, he muttered something about not having the power to change things. Meg couldn't really hear him. Maybe things will go better for me when school's out, he said clearly, a bit louder, still staring at her with his unswollen eye. You'll feel better soon, she said. Are they giving you some kind of painkillers? Yeah, I guess. He turned his head away. You really did it to yourself this time, Meg said, trying to sound light, but it didn't come out that way. Did you come here to scold me? Brian snapped. Very helpful. Sorry, I didn't mean it that way, Meg said, feeling guilty. She was always picking on him, it seemed. From the time they were little kids, she had never been able to tolerate him for more than a few seconds, but she knew she should be a little more understanding now. He really looked as if he'd been run over by a truck. She suddenly remembered Shannon's suspicions about Brian, about that day a year ago in the Fear Street woods. Did Brian have a secret, a dark, dirty secret he had been keeping from them all these months? What were you and Tony doing in the woods so late at night? She asked. She leaned forward and stared into his eyes, hoping it might encourage a direct answer from him. But he didn't say anything. Then finally, in a faraway voice, he said, The warrior came and fought for his place. Brian, really? Meg felt the anger rise in her again, but this time held it in check. But the wizard has tricks that warriors do not know of. Great, Brian, great. So you and Tony were playing Wizards and Dungeons or whatever it's called? The battle isn't won yet, he said mysteriously. Meg realized she had better change the subject. Brian obviously did not want to talk about what had happened. Are you going to get back to school in time for finals? She asked, forcing a smile. He didn't reply. The seniors are out already, she told him. Now they just have to wait for the grades and graduation. It's supposed to rain next Tuesday, so they may have to move the graduation into the auditorium. Again he didn't reply. He was staring at her now. He looked as if he were thinking hard, debating something in his mind, trying to decide whether to tell her something or not. She decided to give him one more chance to talk about the other night. Did you ask Tony to play the game with you, or did he ask you? I will reveal everything when I reach the 4th level and become a full-powered wizard, Brian said. How annoying. She just wanted to shake him. All this stupid wizard talk. Why wouldn't he answer her question? She really wanted to know about Friday night in the Fear Street woods. Was it Tony's idea to go play the game in the woods? Did Brian somehow force him to come along? Tony wouldn't talk about it, and neither would Brian. Why? Were they both afraid of something? Of someone? You look tired, Brian. Maybe I should go. She stood up and stretched. Thank you, he said softly. Was it a thank you for coming, or thank you for going? You'll feel better real soon, she said. You just need plenty of rest. Thank you, he repeated. She reached forward and squeezed his hand. It felt soft and lifeless like an overripe peach. She started to leave, but he held on to her wrist. He pulled her back with surprising strength. She waited for him to explain, but he stared up at her silently. She waited a long while, her hand gripped by his, waiting for him to speak. I should confess, he said finally, letting go of her hand. What? She wasn't sure she had heard correctly. She stared down at the bedspread. It was too painful to look at his swollen purple jaw from this close. No. He seemed to change his mind. He turned his head toward the window. The room darkened as clouds covered the sun. The breeze from the window had turned cold and damp. Another storm was blowing up outside. Meg felt a chill that wasn't caused by the wind. She suddenly had a hunch about what Brian wanted to say, about what he wanted to confess. She took a deep breath. Brian, she said, look at me. He turned back to face her. Brian, did you make a call? Have you been calling me? Yes, he said calmly. I have. Chapter 14. Sunday afternoon. What? She hadn't expected him to confess so quickly, so easily. He was so casual about it, it was hard to believe him. She waited for him to apologize, to start to explain, but he just stared at her blankly. The room grew darker. Nervously, she walked around the bed, and clicked on the table lamp beside it. The lamp cast a yellow glow over his face, leaving his black eye and swollen jaw in shadows, making his wounds seem deeper, more ugly. You admit it? You made that call? Her voice came out higher and shriller than she had wanted, but his casualness was unnerving her. Yes, he said, a narrow smile forming on one side of his puffy, swollen cheek. I wanted... He started to add something, but they were interrupted. His father poked his head into the room, looking concerned. Everything okay in here? Yes, fine, Uncle Sid, Meg said quickly. How are you feeling, Brian? His dad asked. Okay, Brian said after a long pause. Can I get you anything? A Coke or something? A cup of tea? No thanks, Uncle Sid, we're fine. He left reluctantly. Meg listened to him pad down the long corridor, then turned back to Brian. What were you going to say? About the call? Yes. Brian stared up at her with his one good eye. Yes, I remember. I've been calling, and I think I can reach Evan. Evan? I have the power, Meg. I have the 4th level power. I think I can call Evan back. Cut the crap, Brian, Meg shouted with sudden vehemence. She stood over him, her face twisted in anger. I asked you a straight question. I want a straight answer. You're not going to hide behind any of this phony sword and sorcery baloney. You're going to tell me the truth. Brian suddenly looked very frightened. He couldn't be that frightened of me, Meg thought. What is he really frightened of? She was determined to find out before she left the room. Did you call me or not? Yes, I called you, he said, looking to the window. I called you several times, 3 or 4, I guess. What? Several times? Why? Why did you do it? I wanted to warn you. He stopped. I can't talk about it. I really can't. What did you want to warn me about, Brian? She wasn't going to back down. What were you trying to prove? That seemed to make him angry. His swollen face turned scarlet. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I told you I was trying to warn you. Of? To, be careful. But I couldn't tell you. I couldn't admit that, I just couldn't. I hung up each time before you picked up the phone. What? What was he talking about? Wasn't he confessing that he had made the threatening whisper call? That he had been the one trying to frighten her? I was scared, Meg. I really can't explain. I'm telling you too much already. I can't tell you. I just can't. Can't tell me what, Brian? Can't admit what? He shook his head sadly. You really don't understand anything, do you? Can't admit what? She felt so confused now, so frustrated. Why wouldn't he tell her what was on his mind? I can't, Meg. I just can't tell you. Don't try to force me. It won't do you any good. It won't do either of us any good. I'm warning you. Stop saying that, Brian. Stop saying you're warning me. You're not making any sense. You're not explaining anything. Suddenly, he sat up and grabbed her wrist again. He leaned forward, pulling his swollen, battered face close to hers. Close up, in the dim bedroom light, he looked like a creature from a horror movie. The bitter, sharp aroma of antibiotic ointment rose from his face. Meg felt as if she couldn't breathe. He pulled her even closer. I'm warning you, he said, in a low voice she had never heard before. There are things you don't understand. There are dangers. Real dangers. The woods. It wasn't an accident. I shouldn't, but listen to me, Meg. Watch out. I'm warning you. He's threatening me, Meg thought. This isn't a warning. It's a threat. But why? He let go of her wrist and slumped back on his pillow. He suddenly looked exhausted, completely drained. Brian? He turned his back to her. Rubbing her wrist, she silently ran out of the room, down the long, thick-carpeted corridor and out the front door. On the front porch, she stopped and leaned against one of the white columns, taking deep breaths, trying to get the smell of Brian's skin ointment out of her nose. She looked up. Someone was walking across the porch. Ellen! Oh! Ellen's mouth dropped open in shock. Meg, I didn't... Ellen, what are you doing here? Meg shrieked, completely shocked to see her. Well, Ellen looked really embarrassed. I didn't even know you were in town yet. Well, yes, Meg ran over and gave her old friend a hug. You look great, she cried. She took a step back. Ellen looked exactly the same. She still looked beautiful with no makeup at all. Her hair was lighter and longer, but still tossed back simply behind her narrow shoulders. She was still so tall and lanky, still looked exactly like Daryl Hannah. Ellen gave Meg an uncomfortable smile. I just got in, a few hours ago. I was going to call you. I'm just so surprised, Meg said. I looked up and there you were. It's really nice to see you, Ellen said stiffly, looking toward the double front doors. How's Shannon? Good, she's good, Meg said. She can't wait to see you. I'm at my Aunt Amy's. Why don't you come over after school tomorrow? Bring Shannon, too. Okay, great, Meg said brightly. It's been such a long time. I can't wait to talk to you. Me too, Ellen said. She pulled her tan raincoat tighter and shivered. Ellen was always freezing any time of year. "What are you doing here?" Meg asked, suddenly remembering they were standing on Brian's front porch. "I heard about Brian, about his accident. In the woods. I thought I'd just, stop in and say hi." "Oh, that's great," Meg said. "He can really use some cheering up. He's not in great shape." "It must have been awful," Ellen said, closing her eyes. She stepped forward and gave Meg another hug. "See you tomorrow?" "Can't wait. You look great. Really?" "Thanks." Ellen turned and walked up to the front door. Meg stepped off the porch, turning to watch Ellen go into the house, then headed for home, hurrying to beat the rain, thinking about Brian, the awful look on his face, the threats he made to her. As soon as she got home, she rushed to her room and phoned Tony. "Please be home, Tony. Please be home." "Hello?" "Tony? Hi, it's me." "Meg, how are you?" I'm not sure. I was just over at Brian's." "Yeah?" His interest seemed to perk up. "What happened? How come you sound so funny?" "Well, Brian said the weirdest things to me, frightening things. I really couldn't believe—" "Brian, what?" Tony's voice stayed cool, but there was an edge to it. "He said he shouldn't say anything. I mean, he wasn't going to, but he told me—" There was a long silence on the other end. Finally, in what was almost a whisper, Tony said, "He did? He told you?" He suddenly sounded very upset. "Listen," Tony started. "My parents are home. I've got to get off," Meg said. "We've got to talk, Tony. Later." "Yeah," Tony agreed. "Brian told you, huh?" "Well, yes, he—" "We've got to talk, Meg, tonight." "No, I can't tonight, Tony. I've got to write my psych paper. Okay. What about David's party tomorrow night? We'll meet there and then go somewhere, just the two of us." "Yeah, okay, that would be good." Meg was pleased. Tony never wanted to talk about anything serious lately. Now, here he was, volunteering to have a real discussion, just the two of them. "We'll go up to River Ridge. We'll take a walk up there and we'll talk," Tony said. "River Ridge? You mean the place they call Lover's Leap?" "It's pretty up there and we'll be alone," Tony said softly. "We haven't been together for so long. It'll be real nice, Meg, just the two of us." "Okay, but isn't it dangerous up there?" Meg asked. "I'll take care of you," Tony said.